When George Perry published the first image of a koala, which he called the New Holland sloth, in his 1810 natural history work Arcana, he wrote, quote, "The eye is placed like that of the sloth, very close to the mouth and nose, which gives it a clumsy, awkward appearance, and void of elegance in the combination. They have little either in their character or appearance to interest the naturalist or philosopher. As nature, however, provides nothing in vain, we may suppose that even these torpid, senseless creatures are wisely intended to fill up one of the great links in the chain of animated nature." Unquote. Damn. Harsh, George. Now, in his defense, although not very much in his defense, this description reflects the British attitude of the times that Australian mammals were strange and primitive. If you ask me, old George wasn't much of a naturalist if he couldn't find something interesting about koalas. I mean, seriously, for a good naturalist, strange and primitive? That's where it's at. The opposite of that is what? Normal and modern? That's not nature, that's livestock. So let's take a closer look at koalas and prove old Georgie boy wrong. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. Now, like I mentioned, koalas range through roughly 390,000 square miles, or a million square kilometers, of mainland eastern and southeastern Australia, including the states of Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, in addition to having been introduced on several nearby islands. It's not a mystery why koalas are often referred to as koala bears. They have very bear-like features, especially their rounded ears and lack of tail, which is why when European settlers to Australia saw koalas, they called them koala bears. But in addition to round ears and no tail, I think you probably know what a koala looks like. Gray fur, kind of a big bulbous nose, and a look on its face that perpetually says it's not mad, just disappointed. But again, despite the vague superficial resemblance to bears, koalas are not bears, they're marsupials. Weighing in at somewhere between 9 and 33 pounds, 4 to 15 kilograms, and with a body length of 2.5 to just under 3 feet, 60 to 85 centimeters, koalas are among the largest arboreal marsupials in the world. Specifically, koalas from Victoria, which are generally twice as heavy as those from Queensland for, reasons? I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. Now, somewhat like the pandas that I talked about last episode that eat primarily bamboo, koalas are herbivores and primarily eat the leaves of eucalyptus trees. There's over 600 species of eucalyptus in their habitat, but of those 600, there's about 30 that koalas really prefer, mainly those that are higher in protein. They eat about 14 ounces or 400 grams per day, and they get most of the water they need from the leaves, so they don't need to drink very often. But there's not a lot of nutrition in eucalyptus leaves, so koalas lead a low-energy lifestyle, sleeping up to 20 hours a day. The low nutritional quality of their diet and the energy restrictions that it imposes also means that, for a mammal, koalas have a disproportionately small brain, 60% smaller than that of a typical marsupial. In fact, unlike most mammals, the koala brain doesn't entirely fill the cranial cavity, and it's lightened by a large volume of cerebrospinal fluid. The theory is that this fluid helps protect the brain in case they fall out of a tree. Anyways, the end result is that, I've talked a lot about the intelligence of a lot of animals on this podcast, and not to be mean, but koalas don't make the list. Their small brain sizes limit their ability to perform complex behaviors. For example, koalas won't eat plucked eucalyptus leaves off a flat surface because it doesn't match its normal feeding routine. Koalas are asocial and spend just 15 minutes per day engaging in social behaviors. Although, to be fair, if they're sleeping 20 hours a day, that leaves just 4 for foraging, and being social is exhausting. So if you ask me, 15 minutes per day seems about right. Koala society appears to consist of residents, usually a dominant male and females, and transients, who are generally mostly males. In areas of higher density and fewer trees, home ranges are smaller and more clumped. The territories of dominant males are found near breeding females, so younger males have to wait until they reach full size before they can hope to successfully challenge for breeding rights. Now, koalas, like pandas, communicate with scent marking. When a male climbs a new tree, he rubs his chest against it and sometimes dribbles urine. Ha! Here I thought I was just getting old, turns out I'm scent marking. But seriously, chest gland secretions are complex chemical mixtures that vary in composition and concentration across both season and age. Adults, especially males, also communicate with loud bellows, described as a long series of deep snoring inhalations and belching exhalations. Interestingly, the koala's larynx is located relatively low in the vocal tract and can actually be pulled further down. They also possess unique folds in their soft palate known as velar vocal folds, in addition to the normal vocal folds of the larynx. These features allow koalas to produce deeper sounds than would otherwise be possible for their size. And because of the low frequency, these bellows can travel quite far through the forest. Now, koalas might bellow anytime, but they do it particularly during the breeding season in order to attract females and maybe to intimidate other males. They also bellow to advertise their presence when they change trees. These bellows both signal and may exaggerate the male's body size, and females pay more attention to bellows made by larger males. Female koalas also bellow, but more softly, in addition to snarling, wailing, and screaming. These calls are usually made when in distress or making defensive threats. Younger animals might squawk or squeak when upset. Now, koalas tend to avoid fighting because that takes a lot of energy, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's a little bit funny, but most koala quarrels happen between individuals trying to pass each other on a tree. I guess it's like the koala version of road rage, and it can involve biting. Pregnant and lactating females are particularly defensive and known to attack individuals who come too close. In extreme cases, a larger male may try to displace a rival from a tree, chasing it, cornering it, and biting it. Once the rival is driven away, the victor bellows and marks the tree. Now, females in estrus will make it obvious that they're in estrus. They lean their heads back and they shake their bodies. But despite these obvious signals, males will still try to copulate with any old female during this period. Koalas, not too smart, plus males, not too smart, equals male koalas, extra not too smart. Now, a female in this situation might scream and vigorously fight off such a suitor, but will accede to one that is dominant or familiar. But the commotion can attract other males to the scene, so the incumbent might have to delay mating in order to fight off these intruders. At the same time, the female might just learn that there's a more dominant male during these fights. It's not unusual for older males to accumulate scratches, scars, and cuts on the exposed parts of their nose and eyelids. Koalas are seasonal breeders, giving birth between October and May. That said, they're marsupials, so the joeys, usually one but occasionally twins, are born after only about 30 days gestation. Then they go into the mother's pouch to latch onto one of her two teats. Unlike other marsupials, koala milk becomes less fatty as the joey grows. But still, they stay in the pouch for the next 6 to 7 months. When it emerges for the first time, the joey explores its new surroundings cautiously, clutching its mother for support. Around that same time, the mother prepares it for its future eucalyptus diet by producing something called a fecal pap for the joey to eat. Now, while it comes from the cloaca, like poop would, it's not really poop. It's kind of like the cecophages produced by rabbits. This pap comes from the cecum, is more liquid than regular feces, and is filled with all the bacteria that a growing joey needs in order to digest eucalyptus. At 9 months, the joey permanently leaves the pouch and rides on its mother's back as it learns to climb. At 1 year, the mother becomes pregnant again and permanently severs her bond with the joey, although the joey will usually stay nearby until it's about 1.5 years to 2 years old. Average lifespan of a koala in the wild is somewhere between 13 and 18 years. Now, while they can live 13 to 18 years in the wild, there are some caveats to that, and they're vulnerable to a lot of things. Males live a riskier lifestyle and tend to die sooner. Koalas usually survive falls from trees, but younger, inexperienced males can be injured or killed in these falls. Starting around age 6, the koala's chewing teeth begin to wear down, decreasing their chewing efficiency. Even if they're in the best of health otherwise, eventually the cusps will disappear completely and they'll starve to death. Tapeworms, roundworms, mites, and other organisms can all inhabit koalas, and of course various predators see them as potential prey. Like armadillos and leprosy, koalas are well known to carry chlamydia. Yep, just like the STI, which can cause pink eye and both urinary and reproductive tract infections. In fact, chlamydia is the number 2 cause of death for koalas. They can also get what's basically AIDS for koalas, and I'm not joking when I tell you it's called koala immune deficiency syndrome, or KIDS. And then there are bushfires, like the one that raged from September of 2019 to March of 2020, that burned more than 93,000 square miles, 240,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of the state of Wyoming, here where Dispatch's HQ is located. Because of their slow speed, instinct to take refuge in the higher branches, and the extreme flammability of eucalyptus trees, koalas are often unable to escape from a severe fire. Not only that, but fires can fragment their habitat, isolating them, decreasing their numbers, and creating genetic bottlenecks. And that means that climate change might pose a big problem for koalas. Climate change models predict that things will get warmer and drier, suggesting that the koala's range will shrink. A warmer, drier climate also means a greater risk of bushfires. And then, of course, not to sound like a broken record, there's habitat destruction and fragmentation from direct human causes. In coastal areas, this is mainly development, and in rural areas, it's clearing land for agriculture or harvesting the koala's preferred eucalyptus trees for wood products. Since the arrival of Europeans, the distribution of koalas has shrunk by 50%. Now, if there are enough trees, koalas can survive in urban areas, although it comes with a whole other set of threats like vehicles and domestic dogs and cats. But there are also protected areas for koalas, so hopefully they'll continue to be not mad, just disappointed in us humans for a long time to come. Now, one last thing before we leave koalas. Here in Wyoming, we have the jackalope. Australia has the drop bear. What's a drop bear? It's a predatory carnivorous version of the koala. Drop bears are described as unusually large and vicious marsupials that inhabit treetops and attack unsuspecting people or other prey that walk under them by dropping onto their heads from above. And, like the jackalope, it's also completely made up. The origin of the drop bear myth is unknown, but it probably started, as these things often do, as a joke meant to scare or confuse tourists or visiting soldiers and amuse the locals. But that said, until they went extinct about 40,000 years ago, there was a species of hypercarnivorous marsupial that lived in Australia. They were called thylacoleo, literally pouch lion. They were lion-sized marsupial apex predators that lived in caves and were most likely ambush predators who leaped onto their prey like a lion. So, yeah, a myth, but one that actually mirrors a long-extinct reality. Okay, on that note, and I think after thoroughly proving old George Perry wrong, we're going to wrap it up, folks. If you want to support the podcast, go for it. Here's some ways to do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and with 3 paid months, you get some sweet Dispatches from the Forest merch. Find all the details at patreon.com/Dispatches from the Forest. You can donate through PayPal using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com, which is also a great way to contact me if you have any questions, comments, or a request for a future episode. If you want to just send a check, that's not a problem either. Email me and I'll let you know what my mailing address is. You can donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. And then you can go check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/Dispatches from the Forest. Click on products and find something you like. Finally, follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.